This is a quick start guide to extracting data from the F-POD and loading it into the F-POD exe application for the CATT project volunteers. We start with the Read SD tab. We go into the metadata where we give the file a site name, which will be the file name. We then add some metadata, which may be the deployment details, the mooring, any other information about the substrate. We can tell it the depth of the water at the site, the depth the pod was at. We can add the latitude and longitude, and we will add a site code. The software will then take us to Windows Explorer, where we search for our SD card and choose the first chi file on the card, which will be 0fpod000. We tell it where we want to save the FP1, which is normally the desktop, and it will run through and process all the chi day files and build them into an FP1 file, adding a header with the metadata that we have given it during that process. With the file loaded, we then show the whole time range on the screen and go to the beginning where we can start cropping the file by giving it an in point and an end point and telling the software to create cropped versions of our file. This just takes the noisy bits off the beginning and the end and gives us a file that will return some sensible data. That happens very quickly, and at that point we tell it to process the FP1. In the Trains tab, we select our cropped FP1 and set it processing. During processing, we will see orange lines indicating dolphin detections, purple lines indicating porpoise detections, maroon lines indicating boat sonars, and grey lines indicating unclassified detections. When the file has finished processing, we will have created an FP3 file. We can then open a file set, which will be one FP1 raw data file and 3 copies of the FP3, which will contain the extracted click trains. When we load these, we can then switch on all our quality levels, high, low and medium, and all our species. We can then view the whole time range on the screen and show from the start. This will load the file and we'll get our first view of the raw data in the bottom there. We can see some tidal patterns. The next one has orange lines which show some dolphin detections. As soon as the file is loaded, the next thing we would do is graph it. Now we're graphing at the moment here for dolphins, so it will load the raw data in the bottom, which we can see is everything the F-POD heard. The next line up are the dolphin detections. There are a very wide bandwidth of calls in there. The next one up is the click train click rates. So we can see a lot of low rates there and far fewer higher rates. The very top pattern is a dial pattern that shows the average number of clicks in each hour of the night averaged over the entire deployment. We would then do the same thing for porpoises. So the same raw data will be in the bottom, but we can see in the bandwidth for MBHF porpoises a very narrow band of high frequencies around 120 kilohertz. We can see some more click rates there, and at the top the dial pattern is a bit more sparse and spread out. When we have our graphs, the next thing we might do is go to the Analysis tab. This is another one-button push that gives us some useful information of the whole file. Here we're looking at dolphins, and we can see detection positive minutes per day, clicks per minute, clicks per hour. This is a nice little overview. We do the same thing here for porpoises. The detections for porpoises were quite low in this file, much lower than the dolphins, but this is a nice overview we can get for each species. I like to encourage the volunteers to grab a screenshot of each of those blue boxes. So, to summarize, we added metadata and converted the SD card into an FP1 file. We cropped the beginning and the end of that FP1 file. We then ran the train detection algorithm to create the FP3 file. We graphed the porpoise detections and we graphed the dolphin detections. All the data gathered on the CATT project is open sourced at the Figshare Plus open repository. The software we use to analyze this data is available at the chelonia.co.uk website. It's freeware and anyone can download it. Please check because we do update it regularly.